Trump's tariff strategy strengthening America or sparking an economic disaster for the world? This is Ticker Hotshots. Hello again, I'm Aaron Young. Great to be with you. Coming up on the program, Trump's tariff reprieve for Canada and Mexico. How long will it last? What does it mean? And what are the conditions? Also, massive protests in Los Angeles. Thousands of people, pro-Mexicans, pro-immigration, who are lashing out at ICE. Also, some interesting reaction there too. Elon Musk shutting down US aid, that multi-billion-dollar US aid program that sends vital medicines around the world. But is it being overused? And crypto's big fall, what it means for your investments. To help break it all down, we're joined by Ticker's US Bureau Chief Veronica Duda. Always great to see you.
Great to be here.
All right, let's get into it. And global markets are in a tailspin. There is only one reason. It's President Trump's bold stance on trade and tariffs. This is how news.com.au describes it. Nations reacting to tariffs as Trump begins to rattle world markets, and rattle them he did. His new tariffs on China, Canada, Mexico, really shaking economies worldwide. Asian and European stock exchanges plummeting. But let's be clear, this isn't just about market fluctuations. Donald Trump's using tariffs as a negotiating tactic, a really obvious one, trying to secure America's borders and economic future. The Trump administration standing up to unfair trade practices, he says, forcing other nations to play by the rules. Veronica, the obvious question here is, why did it take implementing the tariffs to get, I guess, both leaders of Mexico and China Canada on the phone to pull back and to give Trump a reason to give them a reprieve?
Well, it certainly seems like that's a question for the previous administration, because we have been told that the border is completely secure and that there isn't a problem. We'll try telling that to a lot of the angel moms, and those are the mothers of children who died from fentanyl poisoning and in other cases overdoses. I mean, we have seen some 200 Americans that are dying, and also between the demographic of ages like 18 to 45 with this illicit drug. And we know that it's been pouring in to the United States, mostly from China, but it's coming through the northern and southern borders. So very quickly, we saw President Donald Trump, when he came into the Oval Office, that this was one of his priorities. And so he threatened those tariffs. And, you know, within a couple of hours and 2 phone calls with the president of Mexico and, of course, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau of Canada, both countries agreed to stage 10,000 soldiers at the border. So we will now have 10,000 soldiers from Mexico at the border with the South here in the United States, and of course 10,000 on the north from Canada. In addition to that, Canada has a border czar that they will be electing, and they also agreed to now name cartels as terrorists. And so that is something that we have seen move very quickly. Obviously, China is next. We're told that the president will be having a phone call with him soon, and then probably after that, the EU.
Yeah, well, there's a lot to unpack, and let's have a look at what the markets reacted. Not well. NASDAQ down, the Dow down, European markets were down as well, Asian stocks were down, the ASX took a hit as well, as many countries were reacting and realizing Trump means business. But going back to my first question, I know your answer was this is a question for the previous administration, but Justin Trudeau flew to Mar-a-Lago, and the reason he was at Mar-a-Lago and not at the White House was because President Trump wasn't the president at this stage. Prior to the election, as soon as Trump announced that there would be tariffs imposed on Canada because they weren't dealing with the border, he had Trudeau there. Why did it take weeks after the inauguration and also actually announcing the beginning of tariffs, which was on Sunday, for them to get on the phone and to work out some sort of deal, which, as you say, is the 10,000 troops on the border?
So obviously not privy to that information that's happening among the leaders of nations, but it would seem that potentially the administration said, get it together or else. And it seems that, you know, right in the 11th hour before the or else, they were able to strike a deal.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm interested in. It's fascinating that it took the actual implementation until they were willing to come back to the negotiating table. Obviously, Canada and Mexico very much about the border. But what about China here as well? I mean, China has been long in the sights of President Trump. We remember from his first term from 2016 to 2020. What do you think the negotiating terms will be? Because it's not about putting troops on the border. I think the last thing that the US wants is Chinese troops on the border of the US soil. What do you think it's actually about?
So we have not heard any of those details in terms of what this could potentially look like. But if we look to the actions that have been taken, we know that when it comes to the Panama Canal, that leaders down in Panama have agreed that they will not renew this agreement that they signed back in 2017 with China, and it was for them to enter the Belt and Roadway that China has been having. So we know that this is something in terms of their global reach that they have wanted. That President Trump is trying to stop that, and he is saying that this is putting the America at risk, as well as what is exactly happening in the Panama Canal if we're going to allow Chinese influence. So if you look to his actions in terms of what he wants, it really seems like fair deals, and that he doesn't want China, doing a lot of these different types of agreements, and of course, kind of needling in to try to have that influence over certain structures and of course countries.
I guess the question is whether or not he's serious about these tariffs. We have seen through the market reaction and the business reaction that no one wants to see tariffs at all. And Trump, in the end, as we always say as a businessman, he would certainly know that and lived through the 80s when tariffs and deregulation through the Thatcher and the Reagan era. We know he loves Ronald Reagan. It was all about deregulation. To be the president to become famous for bringing them back, I don't really think he wants that. This is simply, surely, a negotiating tactic, and I just wonder how no one on the other side is seeing through this, because, as we say, the EU is now in the crosshairs of this one as well. What do you think President Trump's gripe is with Europe, and why he has decided to leave countries like the UK and Australia to one side for now?
So if we look to his address at the World Economic Forum, of course, it was a very different tone this time around. He did a video link in which he talked to them, and other people that were on panels were able to ask him questions. And there was deference, there was respect. It was very different than his first presidency when we saw the snickers and kind of laughs. And I think the world knows and sees that he really means business this time around. He has a plan and he wants to really enact it. So he has talked about NATO, and he says that if the United States is involved and we are providing protection, that the countries who have also made these agreements need to be paying their fair share. So that's something we saw, that it was 2% jumping up to 5% for payment of defense. But even with the EU, he has talked about why shouldn't we charge what people are paying us, that we're sending in, if they want to send it to us. So he's saying it would be reciprocal. And so that was something that we saw. He did a press conference in Mar-a-Lago before he was inaugurated, that he said that is going to be on the agenda, this reciprocal trade. So what you do to us is what we'll do to you. So it will be very interesting to see as it shakes out. As you mentioned, of course, some of those markets rattling a bit, the uncertainty of it all, because really no one knows what's going to happen as we are watching these high stakes negotiations. It's really diplomacy, tariff diplomacy.
Now, protests across Los Angeles have erupted as thousands of people took to the streets opposing the ICE raids and deportations. This is the headline from CBS. Protests in downtown Los Angeles over the ICE raids blocking the 101 freeway, and the demonstrators blocked that freeway for hours, prompting police to declare an unlawful assembly and order dispersal. As of the 1st of February, a few days back, ICE so far arrested 8,276 people who the agency says are in the country illegally. This big protest, you expect protests like this one as well. Where are we at with these ICE raids?
So this is something that we know the border czar, Tom Homan, has continued to spearhead. They are coast to coast and nationwide. Basically, they have been telling a lot of the members of the media that they are going for the worst first. Now, in some of these sweeps, when there are other individuals who are with what they are calling, quote unquote, the worst, if they have broken the law, which simply could just be being in the United States illegally, that they too, will be apprehended, and then from there the necessary state of actions would then be taken. And so they are really trying to curtail the criminal activity that's happening, and this is the illegal drugs, the illegal firearms, of course human trafficking, sex trafficking. Also, there are some 300,000 missing migrant children. We heard about last week from the administration. They think that they were able to find about 70 to 80,000 of those missing children, but still there are many more. So, it's a very illicit world that we are watching them try to do a job that they say they have, finally now been able to do with the support of the Oval Office.
Yeah, and obviously there's protests happening nationwide as well. I want to play you this from the New Jersey governor, who says that he's actually been housing a migrant in the hope that the migrant won't be deported. Have a look.
Talking about, I don't want to get into too much detail, but there's someone in our broader universe whose immigration status is not yet at the point that they are trying to get it to. And we said, you know what, let's have her live at our house above our garage. And good luck to the feds coming in to try to get her.
An extraordinary situation where the governor of one state is essentially saying, good luck, just try it on, come and get it, with giving the details there as well. This is a hugely polarizing topic.
It certainly is. New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy, a Democrat, flagrantly, putting it out there that he is harboring an illegal migrant, and, saying that it's sort of a badge of honor that he too is breaking the law. I mean, technically, maybe you could say as an accomplice, or, let attorneys and law enforcement, put those charges through. And he is also, very privileged to be able to make these public statements, knowing full well that, he's in the governor's mansion and the residence, and, kind of laughing, saying that law enforcement wouldn't be able to get through. So is that really the message? Is that what Americans who follow the law every day and are just trying to, put food on the table for their family, have a nice life, save up, go on a vacation? Is that, really what they are supporting of at the moment? We have also seen so many children, grandchildren of migrants, people who have immigrated to the country legally. They too are supporting this effort, because they're saying you can't break the law, that you have to get in line and wait your turn. So, again, looking at the election, there was a mandate for this. This was not a surprise. We know President Trump really did run on this. This was one of the key issues of his agenda, and they are now following through with it.
It is funny, isn't it, when you see surveys right around the world, it's often migrants who are opposed to immigration in these surveys as well. An interesting point you make about thumbing his nose at the law because he doesn't agree with ICE and he doesn't agree with these raids. It is interesting, when President Trump was being pursued by the law under the Biden administration, he still turned up to court. We still have those pictures and images and the mugshot. He didn't decide to hide or to disappear. He said the law is the law, needs to be changed in his opinion, but he will abide by the law so long as he has to. There are some really interesting views on this. This is from one citizen in Los Angeles.
All right, so I'm seeing the protests going on in LA. They're like blocking the 101 freeway or something. It looks absolutely insane because they're protesting over the ICE deportations. So let me get this straight. You're going to come into our country illegally, and then you're going to block Americans from going to work, doing whatever they need to do, and then you're going to burn our flag and you're going to raise your flag up while hating on America, but then refusing to leave it? Call ICE, give them the location. Bye-bye.
She'll probably become the White House press secretary in minutes.
Well, you know what? Try that in a country in the Middle East or in Europe. See
Yeah.
what happens. I mean, obviously here you have the freedom, of speech. You can peacefully protest. Now, of course, police had to get involved to move them just for safety reasons to be able to like free up the freeway. But again, you're entitled to have your opinion. But right now, the law is the law, and that is what they are following.
Elon Musk has declared that US aid is beyond repair and efforts are underway to shut it down. Reports indicating that the Trump administration has recently removed key security officials at US aid, further intensifying many of these tensions there as well. Now, with the US foreign aid at risk, global programs for health and humanitarian assistance could now face severe cuts. Democrats are not happy about any of this.
We are witnessing a constitutional crisis. We talked about Trump wanting to be a dictator on day one, and here we are. This is what the beginning of dictatorship looks like.
As my colleague said, it's not only a gift to our adversaries, but trying to shut down the Agency for International Development by executive order is plain illegal. It is illegal.
And he goes on to hit out at Elon Musk there as well. Now, since World War II, the United States has played a pretty strong role around the world. Essentially, after Europe lost all of their empires, you think of the UK, it was the US that took over, has done pretty well out of business, I might add, thanks to it. Coca-Cola is sold everywhere. McDonald's is pretty much everywhere now. So the US, we can't say, hasn't done well out of globalization on America's terms. But now Donald Trump is trying to wind it all back, as we've been talking about. And then there's the aspect of US aid, foreign aid, which goes to programs, everything from HIV treatments, and it is a lot of US companies that supply HIV treatments as well. What are your views on this?
So it could certainly, have those ramifications that you're talking about, because, if there are businesses who are, producing this, and it's usually happening in other countries. But it was really fascinating that Elon Musk, of course, he's heading up the Department of Government Efficiency, and he went on an X space, and he was basically saying, if you have a worm in an apple, you could take it out, but if you have a bowl full of worms, what are you going to do? And so he's saying that the USAID is beyond repair, which is quite a statement. So it's now fallen under the State Department. We know that Secretary of State Marco Rubio is taking a look at things. There was an email that was sent out to the workers, and they were told to stay home today, work remotely. So they're really doing a deep dive. They want to see what's happening. And some of the, things that are being looked at, the money has been spent on in other countries. Some of these types of parades or cultural, situations, parties. We were also, as the press, told that nothing, was denied, that everything was just told to be approved, to go through. So when you are watching lawmakers on Capitol Hill in the session, for the sessions for Congress, as they are trying to approve budgets, and they're looking at, the trillions and trillions of dollars that they're in debt, at some point, there has to be a pullback. Something has to start to get cut. Otherwise, then, the insanity that you're living just continues on. And so it's just more money that you're racking up. And so it's not a fun job, definitely a dirty job to try to clean that up. Of course, everybody would love to have unlimited spending and to help everybody around the world. But unfortunately, that's just not the reality. So really interesting to see what happens to that agency.
Yeah, well, let's get some facts here. So USA disbursed about $72 billion in 2023. The agency, the world's largest single donor, funding global health, disaster relief and anti-corruption programs. What's wrong with anti-corruption programs, disaster relief and funding global health?
Nothing's wrong with those. It's all of the other things that they're also going towards. We were even listening to President Vladimir Zelensky saying that there was money missing that he can't account for. That was part of some of this aid. And so that's the big question when the money goes missing and you can't find it. So that's, clearly something that will be very interesting to see.
But if they're talking about
and
shutting it down because it's inefficient, I mean, obviously it's really hard to find out where the money goes. And I've watched a lot of of the reaction to what Zelensky said there as well. And Zelensky previously has said we don't actually get money per se. What we get is weapons, and those weapons are built in the United States, and every single state in the United States manufactures weapons. Really, it's a socialist policy by the US government for workers in these different states to build weapons to keep demand going. And that's where so much of the money is going. And we'll get back to that in a minute. You mentioned Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State. Here's his view.
Well, look, I mean, my frustration with USAID goes back to my time in Congress. It's a completely unresponsive agency. It's supposed to respond to policy directives of the State Department, and it refuses to do so. So the functions of USAID, there are a lot of functions of USAID that are going to continue, that are going to be part of American foreign policy, but it has to be aligned with American foreign policy. I said very clearly during my confirmation hearing that every dollar we spend and every program we fund, that will be aligned with the national interest of the United States.
I'd imagine that one of the things that they would have a real problem with, Veronica, is the fact that these agencies have a tendency to become culturally woke, to become culturally progressive perhaps, and to, I guess, the activists take over. What do you think?
Well, there was the answer to your question right there from the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, talking about how he was a lawmaker in Congress and asked for these answers. You know, where's this money going? And they wouldn't answer. So I don't think that you would unlimitedly just, continue to give money and to not know where it's going. That's fiscally irresponsible, and it can't continue, especially, when the question is who's paying for it. And the United States is already having a lot of problems, and they're looking at the debt ceiling and what's going to happen. And that's something that we're going to see start to happen on Capitol Hill very soon, as they, want to try to balance that budget. So, it's unfortunate in that, of course, people would love to help everybody around the world, but it's just not a reality.
Yeah, the Great Reset is underway. Cryptocurrency markets suffered a major decline, Bitcoin falling to a 3-week low and Ether plummeting to early September levels as well. This is the headline from news.com, cryptocurrency sliding. Trump's trade war is rattling the markets, and certainly is. Ether dropped about 24%, experts warning that while some see this as a panic moment, others view it as an opportunity to invest in cheaper assets. The turmoil highlighting the growing sensitivity of cryptocurrencies to broader economic sentiments as well. Veronica, I thought that Donald Trump, the idea was that he was going to be the crypto king. He even has his own coin now, his own meme coin. He spoke back in July last year at a Bitcoin conference where he was very excited about it. Yet this is where things are looking in a very short amount of time. It's starting to make a bit of a comeback, but it got to that $109,000 mark just last week. There have been some concerns post his inauguration about whether crypto means as much to him as what Donald Trump means to crypto.
Well, it's been 3 weeks, so settle down, relax, take a breath. I think it'll be okay.
He's chucked tariffs on China, tariffs on Mexico. He's got thousands of troops at the border. He's got ICE raids with thousands of people. Surely you could say something nice about crypto for all of the investors and the poor Ticker viewers who are sitting right now watching Ticker and holding their phone with a dreaded look on their face.
Well, I would say stay tuned. I definitely think something's in the works. We have heard that from him. It appears, though, that there were just some of those key issues from his agenda that he really wanted to deal with in those, first couple of days and the executive orders. And it's certainly been a lot. It's been fast and furious. The news has not, been boring whatsoever. And so with crypto, it's going to be something that I'm sure we're talking about. When they might release something, I don't know. Maybe they'll invite some more people to the White House. Who knows, clearing schedules. But, he famously went to the conference. He said that he, was interested in it and wanted to really see it happening and wants the U.S. to kind of be the crypto capital of the world. And so when he says, something like that, I would definitely say stay tuned.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel for these, mostly guys in their 20s and 30s, and they've got their crypto stocks and they've pulled themselves away for 10 minutes from PlayStation and Fortnite so that they can check their stocks. They don't have the attention span, Veronica. I think you're wishing that they did right now. I guess the question is it something President Trump does, or are we all just waiting to see what the Fed Reserve does? Because the whole concern about crypto is whether or not it's legitimized by, I guess, institutions like the Fed Reserve. That's what Trump has promised to do. So are we waiting for the White House or for the Fed Reserve chairman to speak about it?
It could certainly even be behind the scenes conversations that are happening now. We know that the new Treasury Secretary, he was just finally approved and sworn in. And that's the other thing, this administration is still waiting for a majority of its cabinet. And so you want them to move quickly. And right now, we're just really seeing these executive orders coming out because lawmakers are still holding a lot of the hearings for these cabinet picks. And this is what we have been hearing from President Trump and Vice President Vance saying, give us our cabinet picks so we can really, start to move on the agenda and what we want to do.
We got picks up right now from that Bitcoin conference back in July. Now this I feel like this was part of the bro podcast strategy, right? If you think about the Josh Rogans and going on all of those podcasts in the lead up and during the election campaign, where Donald Trump essentially really whacked poor old Kamala's team by talking directly to young men. And Bitcoin is one of those policies that if you want to speak directly to young men, this is the topic you talk about.
And something that we have heard often with Donald Trump is that on his sites, he has gone to his workers and he will talk to somebody in hospitality or someone who's driving a forklift and ask questions. And he is sort of surveying and doing that research and trying to understand. So don't forget, he also has his sons, Eric, Don Jr., and of course, Barron Trump, Barron being the youngest one. And we know that he kind of was behind some of those pushes to try to get on those podcasts. And so this could be something that, who knows, maybe they're talking about. And they too believe that it's the future, but it could potentially just be a timing issue or trying to figure out, does the White House make a move on this? How about lawmakers? Is it the Fed, as you just mentioned? So I think there's a lot that really needs to be looked at here moving forward and trying to navigate this new landscape, really, with this decentralized currency.
All right, Veronica Dudo, we've covered a lot today. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks. It's been fun.